Good morning and welcome to This Week in Teams, the February edition of, or the January edition of What's New in Teams. I don't know, do we call it the February edition because we record it in February, or the January edition because it's about January releases, Craig?
It was supposed to be the January edition that we record on the last day of January, but they put out the issue on January 31st, so it was time for us to record that day.
All right, so the January edition, which comes out in February, and so be the future of What's New in Teams. So there wasn't a lot new in Teams, and in fact, if you've been paying attention, we didn't even release one at the beginning of January for December because there was no article. There were no major updates to Teams in the month of December. And the tradition kind of continues.
So, like, my whole world stopped in the month of December as far as work went. I still did some, but there weren't a whole lot of people to work with. All my customers and whatnot just shut down basically after Thanksgiving, and we're like, all we want to do is make it to the end of the year and close out projects. I don't want anything new. I
don't want to deal with anything. Just get me to the end of the month.
Just get me there. Let me get through Christmas. And then, so then we've started up pretty good now. Like, I've had a really good January as far as work goes. A lot of busy stuff.
So continuing the month, continuing from the previous month's list of very poor amounts of things, there were some really big things, but the number of them is quite tiny. I feel like there are even categories missing from the monthly update blog.
And I'm going to say that I was I was reading the list, and there were some, there's announcements there, but there wasn't anything that jumped out at me as being hugely innovative, which is fine.
Well,
he's going to take.
Okay. You ended the sentence with innovative. I agree. Nothing hugely innovative. However, some big end user, I'm not going to say end user. I'm going to say some big catching up with our competitors features came out. And some things that should have been there from the beginning. For example, press to unmute, a simple keyboard combination should have always been there. They've had keyboard shortcuts for as long as I can remember now. The fact that there wasn't a keyboard shortcut for mute my microphone, and the only way you could do it is by using a tool like Stream Deck or buying a literal mute button for your desktop. But even that feature release was a miss because it's not a global feature. So you have to be in the Teams meeting to use the keyboard shortcut. You can't have that window. You can't be in like a OneNote or something else.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you said OneNote, because I said, why wouldn't you be in the Teams meeting? Why wouldn't you be actively participating, include to the presenters every word, right? So,
you might be the note taker.
And actually, you might be presenting and need that global unmute. So,
yep.
That was the miss on that. And if you look at the article, there were several people that made that comment, and I kind of agree with it. Yes, it would be very helpful to have the global unmute. It would also be able to just be nice if it heard me speaking and like pop the message that says, do you want to unmute? And I think it's doing that now, doesn't it?
It totally does that now. I don't know if it does it on the web browser, but it absolutely, like, every time you talk, which is actually amusing when you're not talking to the screen because your kid runs in and they're 3 years old and don't understand the difference between I'm working and I can pay attention to you. So, but it amuses me whenever that pops up and I'm being talked at. But yes, it does have that notification. I'm thankful for the notification rather than an automatic unmute, because that could be disastrous.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting feature. I would like it to take it to that global hotkey, like you said. Yep. But still good. And then there's the custom background on the web, which is helpful because sometimes I don't always have access to the Teams client, and I still want a custom background because my office isn't as clean or as neat as somebody like Jay employees or
I promise there
those
are
people.
areas of the office where it's not clean and neat, but yes, I very specifically make sure this part is.
I'm working on that, so I don't have to use the background, but I still kind of like the background. But
That's fair.
I just gotta get it clean, get it working, and I want to be able to use multiple cameras, which will come later. But
Yep.
to be more
I mean, going completely out of order, multi-camera support is now available in Teams rooms, which is nice.
Yeah, so that will be good and fun if you just set it right and keep it more interested. So Andrew, is it Andrew Honeycutt?
Yeah, and his name is William, but he goes by Andy. Yep.
That's why I get confused. Yeah. So we talked to him a couple of months ago when we were at SharePoint Fest Chicago, and he showed us his set, and he does a little bit of camera switching around to keep it interesting, especially for doing like training and stuff. It's really hard to do it all day and have people pay attention. So he cuts around to different cameras, which is pretty cool. So the ability to do that in Teams room would be fun, especially if you needed a camera, like if you wanted to get the width of the room instead of the front. So that would actually be pretty sweet if they, to see that and have that work kind of seamlessly, right?
Yep. I agree. Also, on that custom backgrounds thing, the nice thing there, just coming back to where we were, sorry. The nice thing about the custom backgrounds thing is that is also available now in government. So that rolled out, custom backgrounds for web, that rolled out in government as well as commercial. Another thing
that was jumping all over, Jay. And I thought the next thing that you were going to jump to was so for jumping, the hardware equipment that you can seamlessly work with the hardware equipment. So now we have Blackmagic and working with Blackmagic capabilities. Blackmagic makes cameras, they make switching devices, those kind of things. And Aja, who also does that similar type of projects. So products, right? Things to allow you to have better sound, better cameras, switchers, and things like that. So they're built. We've partnered with them. Microsoft has partnered with them to make it easier for producers to create better content, interface directly with the hardware. So that is actually something that I thought was pretty cool too, and something I would like to play with. I just am not that good with that hardware yet. So, but it seems cool. Like, and again, for somebody like William Honeycutt, that's going to just make his life a lot easier.
Yeah, we'll have to bring him on and have him talk about why. By the way, if there's anyone out there who wants to sponsor us to get Craig better internet, I would be more than thankful for that. Because your internet has been terrible this morning. Like, you've frozen 3 times. You look like you're stuttering, but you're really just your internet is having a hard time getting through and sending the signal. It's
weird. I don't know that it's my internet because you're coming through fine.
Well, it's usually when you're talking for a long period of time. It's like it's buffering.
Do that.
It's buffering. That's the phrase. Anyway, speaking about production capabilities, that little aside, they also released, and this is these next 2 features tie in together, especially for people who record their Teams meetings like we do. One of them is that there's now isolated audio feeds for NDI. What that means is, in the past, NDI enables producers to use tools like OBS and other things to actually record the meetings and broadcast them live if you want to. And OBS allows you to separate the signals so that Craig's audio and my audio can be separated. So if I start talking over him, the producer can actually mute me completely, and then they don't have to worry about the fact that I like to hear my own voice. Teams has not had that. Teams' competitors has. But this past week or so, they actually released the isolated audio feeds for NDI. And the producer for my M365 government podcast actually was able to play with that, and it was pretty cool. It works exactly as expected. And one of the big things, like if you switch scenes, which we don't do very much, but if you switch between scenes, that's one of the areas where you can actually turn the audio on and off as you switch your scenes. So really cool stuff. Connected to that, and this is one that, Craig, you weren't very impressed with, but I was, is the fact that they basically have a high fidelity mode. They're calling it music mode. But if you talk to any of the other podcasters out there, like Christian Buckley, who has the MVP chat or MVP buzz and a number of other things he does, his complaint has always been Teams audio quality is not as good as some of its competitors. But Microsoft released a music mode, which is supposed to increase the bandwidth support for the high fidelity audio, which when it's available to us, it didn't come to our tenant, unfortunately, but when it's available to us, we'll give it a try and see if you notice.
Cool. Yeah, so it is something that I think would be cool if I knew anything about it. Like,
right.
The sound, like you're a band guy, and sound, obviously you got the bass in the background, and music is important to you, and
that's an orchestra thing. But yes, keep going.
Yeah, no, I know, but you probably have a better sound or a better ear for the sound than I do, and know how to control it. Like I said, I would like to know that and like have like the better soundboards and the cutting around, but we haven't been able to play with that yet. So we're gonna get there.
This next one really excited me until Craig told me it did nothing for him. And I mean, literally, it didn't change anything for him. And what that is
I squashed Jay's dream. It was awesome.
You really did. Mirror my audio. So I was my video. Sorry. I was really excited because the mirror my video option makes it so that things like the text and the layout of the room are not mirrored. And so right now it's turned on. If I turn it off, it's great because now the words are straight for me. But hey, it was already that way for you. So for the average person, this really isn't going to do anything. And in fact, it's going to confuse you because if I look at my screen, my base is over there, but it's actually over there. And now it's just so like if I go to turn to my base, my eyes are going to tell me to turn this way, and that's clearly the wrong. But Craig, you had a good use for this.
Oh yeah, so this was more designed for teachers and people who are looking at the board and trying to see what other people are seeing when they're looking at them, so they're pointing at the right object. So it is helpful if you're doing those kind of demonstrations. And I always didn't like it. Like if you uploaded your own picture into a background, the logo and the wording to you was backwards. So then I always thought, like Jay did, is my audience seeing it backwards? And I wish I could flip it around so that they can see it better, which was not the case. They were seeing it correctly. And I think I knew that, Jay, because that was the first, I think it was with Ralph Rivas, who helps us do M365 Chicago. I'm like, the first time I uploaded our user group logo, was all the words were backwards. I'm like, well, that's stupid. He's like, well, it's fine. I'm seeing it. Right? So, okay. He's like, Teams does that.
I just wish everyone else could have seen it, because it was a little Groucho Marx earlier when we were warming up for the show, and I was all excited telling Craig about, look at how different this feature is. Isn't it neat how my base is on the other side? And he's like, nothing's changing. Like, I don't know what you think you're doing, but nothing is changing. And I'm like, what? So yeah.
So then I had to demonstrate it. Like, turn it. I see. This is what happened when I turn it off. He's like, turn it off. I'm like, I did. And now I turned it back on.
So yeah, so not as big a deal as I thought it was. Again, interesting for teachers. I'd be curious if you use that feature, whether you're in education or not. Let us know. I'd be curious to see how you use it, because it definitely totally was a letdown for me. Also, speaking of letdowns, those of you who, I'm going totally out of order, but it should be in this category. Those of you who record your meetings, something that you may not be aware of is all of those meeting recordings add up, and your company has a limited amount of storage. Now, it's a very high amount, especially if you have lots and lots of employees, but it's still finite. And so what Microsoft has done is they've set up an auto deletion policy for managers, or admins so that they can, after 60 days, all of your recordings will get moved to the recycle bin. Now, I say the recycle bin and not deleted because the recycle bin in SharePoint and OneDrive, which is where these recordings are stored now, it's a 3-month or approximately 90, I think it's actually 93-day deletion process. There's a recycle bin, there's a secondary recycle bin, and then there's, what's the third step? It's not a tertiary cycle. Why is it 93 days?
Because it's 30 days till it gets removed to the second storage, and then it's 63 days.
No, but anyway, that's pretty terrible.
There's a couple days to process, but it's 93 days.
So long story short,
I think it depends whether it's
videos are important to you, you've got to, I guess that becomes the question, right? Like, if a video is important enough to keep, where should people keep it, Craig?
Stream.
There we go. I was wondering, paused just long enough, and your face is still frozen, which is why I said, but you paused just long enough. I was wondering if I actually set you up for failure on that one. Yes. So
you did. I never really thought about it.
Oh, well, good job.
Yeah, if it were important, I would take it off of, I would put it someplace that I wanted to keep it. I will have to look into that. Maybe there's a setting for that, like to keep the video or whatever.
Yeah. So what Microsoft is doing is OneDrive and SharePoint are not meant to be video storage platforms. Clearly, it's where they store the video. And the reason they do that is because it enables you to share it more easily in one-off scenarios. It enables you to use things like anonymous sharing, so you can share it with people outside your tenant if that's a setting your company allows. But also because it enables your administrators to do things like create retention and deletion policies, to do
prevention,
data loss prevention, and to do compliance
sensitivity.
Yep. So they can do all of these things in OneDrive and SharePoint that they couldn't do in Stream. Stream is your video library. If you are intending to keep it, Stream is meant to be a curated video library. It's why they pulled the video recordings out of Stream and put them in your OneDrive. So a little background for our everyday users of why Stream exists and how it's different from storing videos in OneDrive, and awareness that if a video is important to you, you better talk to your admin about, hey, should I be using Stream for this? This is something I want in posterity, not just for the next 3 months. So,
good job, good explanation.
Thanks. We're gonna stretch this 10 things out as long as we possibly can. I mean, realistically, though, Craig, that's everything that matters to end users, right?
No, you missed one.
What did I miss?
And I set you up for it. I threw the lob. I said sensitivity labels can be used on Stream stuff.
Oh, you're talking about sensitivity label support for Gov.
Yes.
See, and I don't think end users care about that. It is an important feature. So sensitivity label support has been available in commercial for a little while now. It's what connects your teams to your DLP capabilities. And my coworker Antoine does a really great presentation on exactly what it means. But for the everyday user, really what it means is if your admins have decided that a team is of a particular sensitivity, they're going to turn it on and some of your features are going to go away and you're done.
So one other one that I think is interesting, because now just popped in my head, but transcriptions for one-on-one calls.
Okay, and call recordings for them as well.
Yes.
So I think it's a more limited use case. But I was actually thinking about it because one of my BDRs, business development reps, sent me a recording last week of a phone call that they had with one of the prospects. So because we were going to have a meeting with them. And so we record those calls and I can listen to it and hear what the cadence was and get a sense for the body language, so to speak,
right,
before we get on a phone call. And I think it'll be really useful for them. In fact, I think it's kind of an attack on that market because there's a whole market geared towards people whose job it is to make phone calls. And with that, you can record calls, you can transcribe them, you can get sentiment analysis, you can share them. And this is the start right down that path, because if I'm in Teams, what better way to share a call recording than in Teams, right?
Yes. No, that's definitely a good use case. I was thinking more of, we're talking and you have a heavier accent, or, English isn't your first language. So then I can actually see, or I'm hearing impaired, I can actually see the words rather than rely solely on, did I hear Jay correctly? And then, of course, my mind goes to, what is that?
Yep.
Because the transcription still becomes subject to like data loss prevention, all those kind of things, which is fine, which is good. But I know that I've had the one-on-one conversations with people, and just sometimes, you say not necessarily anything to business, but just words that come out, that you don't normally use in business. So, like, I'm thinking profanity and stuff like that, maybe. Do I want to see them in transcript or in call recordings?
I'm thinking people like Joe Rogan might have said a few things under recording that they wish hadn't been said before. So, yeah. That's fair, and that is something to consider. And that's actually, like, running a podcast like this where we don't edit very much. Like, every once in a while, Craig and I pause and go, we should edit that wasn't very professional. So yes, you do need to be a little bit more careful if you're recording your calls, or if your calls are being recorded. So, Craig, I think that's the tier 1 end user focus stuff. There were some other. What happened?
Sorry, I was just, so we have like a cheat sheet of stuff we want to cover, and Shift for Teams connects. I don't even know what that is. Frontline workers, Shift for Teams connect to Reflexis shifts.
So Reflexis shifts is a shift worker tool, or a shift worker platform, and Shifts for Teams is a shift worker capability in Microsoft Teams. And so what I mean by that is, if you work 8 to 3 and someone works 3 to 9 or whatever, and I don't think those times equal out, but then that's considered a shift. And there's a whole industry around shift worker, like scheduling and all of that. So Microsoft is very proud.
Yeah, that's starting to become popular. I'm seeing more and more of that. But I read it as Shirts for Teams, and like, did we suddenly get into like hard? Or what? I can't. It's too early for me. It's 7 a.m.
Yeah. No.
Shirts for Teams.
This is declining so quickly, I might actually edit it. Oh man. So the Shifts for Teams connection to Reflexis is a big deal if you're a frontline worker or a shift worker. Also, PTT mode, which is walkie-talkie mode. There's a new hardware hardware connectivity for Zebra Android, which I had never heard of before. So there's that. And then there's I'm going to literally read like 4 or 5 items that really they might be of interest to you because they're related to Teams rooms. But I know most people aren't back in the office yet, so it's even less likely. But if you go to the office, like I do every once in a while, I probably twice a week, and if you have a Teams room, which we do, things like the front row layout, which gives you the layout, the pictures, the video of people on the bottom, so it's at your eye level as opposed to at the top of a big screen. Things like Cortana integration, so that you can use Cortana to which is Microsoft's AI, to do things with the Teams room, like connect to meetings. There's now a Meet Now capability. So if you're in a Teams room and it was very annoying. If you're in a Teams room and you need to call somebody, there's no ability to just stand up a meeting. It has to be scheduled for you to connect to it, or they have to call into your room. So the Meet Now capability is nice for Teams rooms. And then there's things like integration with Meta Portal, which is Facebook's technology, and cameras and headsets and speakerphones galore. But really, like, that's not what we talk about every month. That's how light this month's release is.
So you mentioned Meta, and I just remembered. I'm going to share my screen for a second. Jeff Tepper, posted this on Twitter, a picture of what they're working on, building the metaverse in the metaverse with mesh for teams, right? So this just looked really cool of what I'm assuming, you would have like the HoloLens or virtual reality goggles, and this setup for your teams looks pretty cool. So not sure exactly, but new fancier buttons and some really cool looking avatar stuff. So as we get into more of that. Are they still just
upper body avatars? Yeah, they're still just upper body avatars, huh?
Yeah, and they float above chairs, so it's
thank God they have chairs for them, though. No, I Jeff, the likelihood that you're listening to this is extremely small, but I'm not. I do appreciate where this is going. It just is kind of ironic that we have chair backs for our avatars with no chair butts and no lower bodies. So, yeah, I mean, it is. I will be interested. I've got a friend who has puttered with the idea of a mixed reality, augmented reality video cast to really dig into the business applications. And there's some cool stuff coming. So I am interested to see what Microsoft does in this realm. And we've had some good conversation around it. I think who did we talk to, Craig, last Ignite or 2 Ignites ago? We talked to, was it Sharon Weaver? That we talked about augmented reality and the business applications. So it could be really good. We'll put a link in the show notes if you're curious about learning more about that conversation and what we talked about. But Craig, I think we're done. Like, I think we've stretched this out as long as we possibly can.
Yes. Even longer than needed to be.
So thank you guys for joining us for the January What's New in Teams.
If you made it this far, please subscribe if you haven't already subscribed.
That's fair. And we'll see you guys.
Get to 27 users. So actually, I think we're up closer to 60, but
so we'll see you guys next week with our recording. We have an episode with Susan Hanley talking about Viva. So very excited to bring that to you for Valentine's Day. That's I didn't realize that's when it was going to release. So there you go. Craig, have a good one, man.
Thanks. You too.
We know you liked this episode of This Week in Teams because you're still listening. So if you want to hear more like this, make sure you click the subscribe button, notifications, and go to onthespot.tech for more from This Week in Teams and our sibling podcasts.